Good morning. You're listening to Central Wisconsin's 24-hour information station, AM 1320 WFHR. It's time now for the Morning Magazine, brought to you by the Riverview Hospital in Wisconsin Rapids and Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. Now, with the Morning Magazine, here's Carl Hilke.
And good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's show on AM 1320, as well as on the web at WFHR.com. It's time for our monthly update from Wood County Board Chairman Lance Pliml. We also welcome our friends from River Cities Media, who are digitally recording this for a later broadcast on your favorite cable access channel. And with that, we welcome the chairman of the Wood County Board, Lance Pliml. Good morning.
It's a pleasure to be here again, Carl.
I guess you said the county clerks from around the state are in town this week or today.
They are. The Wisconsin County Clerks Association is in town, and as I addressed them the other day, I told them they're a dangerous group. You know, this is the group that in reality provides a lot of continuity at the counties, and they really are people who hold that operation together at some level. It's a pleasure to have them here. Our clerk, Cindy Seapress, did a remarkable job of bringing them all here, hosting the conference. I had the opportunity, like I said, to address them at their opening. I had an opportunity to see them at the Rafters game last night when they were up in the trap. They were all having a good time, and yet they were getting a lot of work done. I know during the day they start pretty aggressively at about 7 a.m. with breakfast, and they run till about 5 o'clock in meetings. And then at night, have an opportunity to get out and see some of the local flavor. So it's been a good conference.
Okay, well, I'm glad to have them. I mean, that's money.
And I was also glad to see the clouds part for a day or two. We went from really total drought last summer to this summer. I swear it rains every single day out there.
Over 4.5 inches of rain so far this month.
Yeah, and it's obviously helping the mosquitoes eat me every night. They've been vicious out there, but I'm willing to have a break. About a week of that kind of 80 degrees and sunny would be really nice about this time.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about that. The summer season has been off to a fast start. We had a Cranberry Blossom Festival here in Wisconsin Rapids. Was a huge hit. A lot of visitors, a lot of people coming out. I'm hearing that the county parks are full on every weekend. It looks like a good start to the summer tourism season.
It is. It amazes me, first of all. I often hear there's nothing to do in town.
Yeah, right.
And I actually made the comment to my son the other day, right? I said, if I tried, I couldn't get to every single event that's going on over the next 4 days. And I said that last Thursday. There's something happening everywhere at every moment.
Mm-hmm.
If you just take the time to look around you and see what events happen locally. And our parks have been a beneficiary of that in these events. We basically fill up our campgrounds every weekend. We have some overflow into the week. I obviously like to fill them up all week long, even those Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, and we constantly work on that through improvements. I think what amazes me, though, is spring came so late this year. We're looking at not 2 days down the road here, but next weekend's the 4th of July.
I know.
And I always kind of think of the 4th of July as halfway through summer.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I've had 5 days of summer yet. So, it's fast approaching. But our people on the ground have done a remarkable job. I had a group in town about a week ago that said that our park system was one of the best that they have experienced as they've traveled around the country. So, you're very proud of that. And the recognition, the kudos goes out to those people in our parks department, the taxpayers who fund them, and then the supervisors who realize that that's a benefit to everybody and are willing to allocate tax levy to make our park system as good as any out there.
And they're revenue generators. Let's face it, like for instance at NEPCO, you got that beautiful lodge over there, and that gets used for family reunions and the like during the summertime.
We generate a lot of revenue. We are not levy neutral. There is some levy that goes into it, but between the shelters at NEPCO and over at Wazeecha and out at Dexterville and up at North Park, especially this time of year with graduations, a lot of weddings in June and July, those shelters are full almost all the time. We had the new one built out at South Park at Lake Wazeecha, completed about 2 years ago.
That's an
absolutely beautiful facility. It was done with a lot of matching grant type dollars and a lot of work by the aqua skiers that they put in as kind of payment in kind to get that project done. You then also have the one at NEPCO, which is heated and air conditioned. So that one, year round is used. And that's something, as we look at improvements going on, we will probably do more of because the use at that shelter is exceptionally high. Again, any member of the community, by calling our parks office, has the ability to to utilize those facilities for those types of events. And like I said, we see graduations, we see weddings,
family
anniversaries,
reunions.
Family reunions. Yeah, you name it. They're out there. So you might want to think about that when you're wondering, where am I going to host that rather large party?
Yeah, if you got the task and you say you're next, it's next year's your turn. Give a call out to the Wood County Parks Department and say, how can I go about reserving a time for?
No, it's a real good idea. And there's parking, there's space. The views are beautiful.
Right.
And if you pick the time of year, you can take advantage of some of the other facilities out at those parks. Kids kind of go one direction, adults maybe another, but great opportunities.
And then, like our friends at Visit Wisconsin Rapids are more than willing to help put together packets of information for you to hand out to your guests. So you can come off looking real classy.
Yeah. And while we're talking about parks, we have another public facility, and I just want to bring this up.
Go
we
ahead.
have one of the best public rifle ranges around.
That's true.
Very few have the facility we have, and it's free, and it's basically open all day long, every day. And yet we have a tremendous amount of dumping out there and litter out there, people hauling things. I have personally witnessed somebody haul a TV down to the end of a 100-yard range to shoot it out, and obviously that leaves a mess, and they don't. A, it shouldn't be out there, and B, it makes a mess. And, I'm going to ask the people out there to, A, help us police that area if they see that kind of thing going on. And then I have had some concerned citizens call me with some of those issues, including disrepair, because people will go out and not hang a target on the target hanger, so to speak, but actually put it on the post and then shoot up those posts which hold the targets. So
Come on, people.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that we provide, in the county, and the usage is tremendously high. But, we need help at all of those places policing those. If you see anybody doing anything that looks illegal or unsavory at any of those sites, feel free to give a call to our sheriff's department, the dispatch center, so we can follow up. Because the last thing we want to do is have those places a mess when you go out there to utilize them.
That's right. It's not fair to the people who use the facility in a proper way.
Responsibly, absolutely.
Okay. Now let's talk about roads. It's road construction season, patching season, what have you. What's the state of Wood County roads after this harsh winter? And then we can talk about a thing called bonding.
Well, it was an extremely tough winter, and I made the comment the other day. I was trying to give somebody directions through Wisconsin Rapids, and I said, "Hold it, no, you can't. I got to go." And it's tough. And road construction season is short.
Thursday, though, I guess
we have a ribbon cutting.
Yep, for the roundabout by the courthouse.
Yeah, and that'll be a welcome project to be completed, because it's caused some real hardships in the area of the courthouse, for instance, with parking, with handicap accessibility, some of those issues. It was a project that obviously needed to be completed once started, so we understand that there's going to be some time involved. I think they've really moved that project along fairly quickly. But every road, everywhere, is torn up. In fact, last week I made the comment 48th Street was torn up as they develop out towards Buren in the industrial park. 80th Street was under construction north. And if you wanted to go north and south to get to Highway 54, you had to really pick your way through. There wasn't, sometimes I think it's lack of coordination. At other times I just realize that there's a need that it be done, and the time frame to do it is very, very short. That being said, we had a lot of damage this winter, obviously, due to the conditions out there, the weather conditions. We also know that when our roads were built 40 years ago, they were not built to withstand either the amount of traffic or the weight of the traffic that we have today. We in Wood County have been able to maintain, and you've heard me say this on the show many times, we've maintained our tax rate for 16 consecutive years. As a county, we've never asked for money from the taxpayer unless we absolutely need it. One of the opportunities we looked at this year was bonding some additional road work, some improvements. And I guess to liken this to your home, it would be somewhat like painting your home when it needs to be painted instead of wait until the paint peels off and the wood rots, and then you have a much greater expense down the road. So when we look at borrowing money and we look at those projects, we're always looking at what's the most economical way to do this in the long run. And sometimes if you spend, and I'm just making numbers up, but sometimes if you spend $2 or $3 million now, you might save $20 million down the road. Money is exceptionally cheap right now. Anybody who's out there has gone to buy a house recently, those of us who bought our first house in the 80s and paid, 14, 15, 16% interest, realize that 3.5% to 4.5% money is pretty reasonable. At a municipal level, we can bond money right now somewhere between about 1.8 and 2.2%. So it gives us the opportunity to leverage some dollars to complete some projects. And I wouldn't call it putting a Band-Aid in. I'm talking, really do some improvements that will run out the time frame that those roads will last. So we had a bonding issue that came before the county. It requires a 3/4 vote to pass, and it failed. Somewhat close to that 3/4 amount, but it failed. And so I guess I take some of the personal responsibility in that respect. It's a different way of doing business. And if you're philosophically opposed to bonding for any project, I certainly understand that. And every single board member's vote is sacred and it's precious. And, I'm never somebody who walks into a meeting and says, that guy voted the other way, he was wrong. No, he had a different opinion and a different way of doing business. My concern on this one is we probably didn't tell the story right. This issue pertained to the ability to bond for about $4.8 million, of which I don't think we would have approached, but it allowed us to use those numbers as we put the budget together this year. I think we can bond about $1.8 million as we structure payments and debt and we look at tax rates without any impact to the levy at all. In other words, 0% increase. And it also allows us to leverage a few more dollars from state and federal sources. Mm-hmm. So, we're going to look at this. We'll look at it again. If we told the story right and it's still a no vote, then you go back to the drawing board and you start over. And like I said, I never disparage those who vote the other way. It's a different opinion. I just have a feeling we might not have explained this as well as we could have going in.
Okay, so you think it'll come back to the board?
I think it'll come back to the board at some point. You said it required a 3/4 vote of the elected body, and we happen to have 2 supervisors who are absent from that meeting. So right away you have 2 no votes.
Right.
And when you need 3/4 of 19, you're already on your way to defeat. I don't know if it would have passed or not, but I think at some point, as we further fine-tune those numbers, that we really look at what those needs will be and tell a better story, I think it has a very legitimate chance of being one of the ways we go.
What are some of the major projects that would cover?
I don't know that I could identify them right off the bat, but I'm going to give you an example of how fast some of this stuff can fail. We did County A just a few years ago, and County A became almost at some point the main thoroughfare up to Marshfield, especially when at that time, Highway 13 project was going on. Now, you're 73 and 80 out that way.
Right.
I have even trouble giving people directions from time to time.
I do too.
Today. But as that project was going, there's a tremendous amount of traffic on County A, and that was built to fairly high specs. If you drive down that road right now, you're going to see a fair amount of cracking and sinking, and you can see that it needs repair. I have a feeling if we got out there right now and did some of that road work, we would probably alleviate some real big expenses down the road. Our county highway department went out and they have studied, they do what are called PACER ratings on every road out there. We would certainly take those dollars and utilize those on the ones that needed the work the most. And I'm not exactly sure which those are right at the moment. I could venture a guess on some of them. And the other part of that is some county roads are more arterial in nature than others are. I mean, we have some very, very rural county highways that don't have a tremendous amount of use and will stand up in their current condition for many years. We have others that are used, very heavily, and those have to be handled. And then we also have the frac sand issue.
I was going to say, you got the frac sand issue.
And that part, and that usage is being covered by those fees that those people are paying for I'll call it the extraordinary damage that may occur. But this would kind of be a revamp, go out there, look at those roads. We have bridges that have been there since the 50s and 60s, and they're going to need work. And I would much rather incrementally, I guess if it was my dollars in my business, and I try to look at everything in that respect, I would rather spend, pick your number, $2, $3, $4 million a year incrementally to bring those up to snuff than get hit with a $50 million bill and have to bond for that at some time. While we do that, though, we have to look at the tax impact. There's nobody I have yet, and we've talked about this on this show many times. I've never had anybody out there when I do a forum or when I speak to a group say, are your taxes too low? And have anybody raise their hand. Taxes generally, people realize things need to be done. If you can tell a story and sell the product because it needs to be done, then it's worthwhile. If you can't, then you better maintain that tax rate. So we look at how all that plays out, and we realize that with the increases with the school districts, the municipalities, the tech schools, and us, that total impact impacts your wallet. So at the end of the day, it also has to be affordable.
Yeah, especially in these days. If you're just joining us on the Morning Magazine, welcome. In part one of today's show, we're visiting with Wood County Board Chairman Lance Pliml. But since we're talking budgets, it's budget time, or soon will be.
It's always budget time, it seems like. We start the process really back with the capital improvement plans, looking at those even a couple of months ago. But we really are getting into the heart of this right now, where the departments are asked to bring forth their budgets for next year. We obviously start to go through those and with a fairly fine-tooth comb, although we've provided much more autonomy to those department heads who really know what those needs are in those departments. We basically say, here's the dollars you have to work with, make the program fit, as opposed to the federal government, which says, hey, what's the program, and now we'll tax people enough to pay for it.
Okay.
It's a little different mindset. We have a finite amount of dollars, and we have to work within that. We are not allowed to print money like other entities are. So the process can be fairly daunting. Like I said before, we have not seen a tax increase from a county perspective in 16 years. You cannot see a decrease every single year because we can't go to zero. That's not attainable. It's impossible. Although I think my dad would like to see that. I keep explaining that can't happen. But we really do look at the impact of families, and how it's going to impact you when you get that bill. And I know that we certainly have people that are retired on fixed incomes. We have those who have lost jobs. And you can't continue with a bigger tax burden every year and make things comfortable for them. It becomes very difficult. So we scrutinize every program. My big concern always, not just at our county level, but as I serve on the Wisconsin Counties Association Board of Directors, is I think we constantly have to look at the entire scope and purview of government. I often get asked by somebody, why don't you do this? And the answer is, well, what do you want to pay? And then when we step back at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer that as a society, government is probably doing too many things. Mm-hmm. We're providing too many services. We probably don't have realistically, if you went back, I'm not a strict constitutionalist necessarily, but if you went back to that point, you're saying, where do you draw the line? What do we provide? How many safety nets are there? You try to balance that with, the social concerns out there. But I would bet, and this is what we've looked at the county, we are mandated to provide certain programs because we are an administrative arm of the state.
Right.
But there's nowhere that it says you have to provide a Cadillac program, so to speak, when you might be able to provide, I don't want to disparage another car maker, a bicycle program.
Okay.
Or something less expensive. So we constantly look at what should we provide, to whom should we provide that, at what level, and then how does that fit with that whole puzzle? And that's what we're doing right now. You lay all those pieces on a table and you start to put them together, and we say, what do we need to increase? What do we need to decrease? How do we drive economic development? How do we create, a whole society of people who contribute?
Right.
And that's what we're looking at on a daily basis.
And one of the words we hear a lot in government relations and in budgeting is partnerships. Public-private partnerships seems to be the wave of the future because both are facing limited resources, and if they can partner together, they can get some things done.
You're right. These discussions become very deep and they become very long. But at the end of the day, there's only so many things that can be provided, and the public-private partnerships really assist in that, and it brings a different perspective. We have. I will give you an example, and it's fairly simple. One of the goals of right now of Washington and the state. And even at the county, and I think it's a good idea, is to keep people in their homes rather than into maybe communal living situations. And you say, that's a good idea, and I don't think anybody would disagree. Everybody say, yep, that's a good idea. That's the best place for them to be. Now you bring in part two. You say, but now they live 25 miles out of the city, but they have no transportation. So do you provide buses? Do you provide car service? Do you provide free taxi service? So there's a lot of factors that play into that. The stay in there is great, but then societally, at what cost do you stay there? And you balance that. At the end of the day, you look at what's the least cost from a social perspective to provide those types of programs. And that's one, that's just one example, and that happens everywhere. So sometimes you constantly feel like you're walking a tightrope.
And then you got your space needs, and that's going to be a big part of future budgets.
That's one of the big ones right now. If you talk to me and said, what are the two issues facing us, I'd say it's infrastructure. In our case, that's highways and communication infrastructure, because right now we get people, I have personally had people tell me they have not located their business here because of the lack of, in some cases, the ability to transmit data at particular speeds. We don't have the capability in some of the rural areas to do what we need to do.
Because like here in Wisconsin Rapids,
Wisconsin Rapids pretty good. Yeah. But you get too far. You can drive between here and Marshfield and lose a cell phone signal.
Okay.
So, the capability to transmit data from people who can work from home now, because you can pretty much work anywhere in the country and live here. We actually have real estate contracts that I have seen with data capability, as a contingency to the contract. They have to have proof that they have those speeds. Infrastructure with roads, huge one. And then the other infrastructure, space needs. Where are we going to be in 10, 20, 30 years? My biggest concern is safety within the courthouse, with relocating our IT department out of the basement of the courthouse because of the last place you really want that electronic equipment is in the basement.
Yeah.
And we have a dispatch center that we placed basically below ground level at the time we created it because we had nowhere else to put it. But realistically, that's something also that should probably be brought up above ground. So I'm guessing that we probably have $5 to $6 million of immediate needs there. We probably have somewhere between $2 and $5 million of immediate road needs. And then how do we address that?
That's part of the puzzle. And that's, I guess, part of the challenge that you and your fellow county board members and also all the department heads and staff members are going to be facing. What's the timeline for getting the budget approved?
We as a finance committee, or it's called the executive committee, we usually have this wrapped pretty well by September, early September. By the second week in November, we have to have that budget hearing, that budget published and out. But we'll be pretty set by very early September. We'll have a lot of the nuts and bolts together probably by mid-August. And we've streamlined this process greatly in the past. But I think the important thing out there, whether it's a county budget or whether it's your household, you have to look at it the same way. And I always tell people, whether you're running, a multi-billion-dollar paper company or a lemonade stand, business is business. There's just a different number of zeros at the end of the balance sheet. You still revenues still have to exceed expenditures, or they at least have to equal them, or you aren't in business very long.
Well, let's hope in terms of our tourism business that this will be a lengthy summer, and the warm weather will stay with us for a while so that we can catch up.
It will. We had a good winter season, actually. We really had no spring. We certainly like to see summer that way because tourism is probably the quickest way to build revenue without having to build a lot of infrastructure. You're not providing extra schools and the such. So it's a great way to drive revenue. We had an increase in Wood County last year, and we're hoping to see another one this year.
Okay. Well, I know you're very busy, and as always, we appreciate your time, and we'll look forward to our visit next month.
Thanks, Carl. Really appreciate it.
Okay. Wood County Board Chairman Lance Pliml, wrapping up part one of today's edition of the Morning Magazine. The Morning Magazine, as always, is brought to you by Riverview Medical Center. With you, it's personal and Comfort Air.
I'm with Carol.